If anybody's familiar with George Will, well, I found this fucking piece from him in the Washington Post, and it's total fucking garbage. So George Will, for those of you who might not know George Will, is this, like, real old school douchebag conservative type who for some reason is viewed as this, like, public intellectual who, he actually ended up, like, one thing, he's actually he's very anti-Trump. He is no longer a Republican and is just an independent now because the Republican Party became the Trump personality cult. But that doesn't make up for the fact that George Will just tends to have really fucking cringe takes on things. And I found a collection of really cringe takes on this new voting rights protection bill that's working its way through the federal government that got published in the Washington Post for whatever fucking reason. Used to be a creative destruction of his mobile battle royale game. Prize pool was decent, won $200 from it. Now the prize pool's fucking trash, so you stop playing it. When the prize pool was only $20. I know that, like, there's some, like, iRacing for money, but there is some sim racing for money, but there's this one dude I watch on Twitch who, like, he deserves way more viewers than he gets because he's a god at sim racing. He's, like, won series championships and like, highly competitive sim racing series and shit, but he like, still works a fucking 9-to-5 job. But he's on, like, a team and shit. Whenever he's sim racing on stream, he's, like, wearing this uniform and everything. Anyhow. I figured I'd give this fucking steaming pile of garbage a read to show you guys the, like, boring fucking white bread stupid bullshit that this guy George Will always brings to the table. During the Nixon administration's Watergate unraveling, Henry Kissinger's mordant jest was, "The illegal we do immediately. The unconstitutional takes a little longer." But not long, say today's congressional Democrats. Their For the People Act, which he will then refer through the rest of this as FTP, is 800 plus pages of provisions convenient for them and their party, some constitutionally dubious, and others patently unconstitutional. All laws regulating campaigns are enacted by people with conflicts of interests in advantaging themselves and disadvantaging challengers. Oh boy. Oh, that's such a fucking galaxy brain to take right there. Okay, is that what Republicans were doing when they were fucking enacting the absurd voting restrictions that inspired a federal piece of legislation like this? FTP would dictate sweeping changes to all 50 states' election laws, contravening the Constitution's stipulation that times, places, and manner of congressional elections are to be determined by state legislatures. Granted, the Constitution says Congress may alter such rules, but dictating, for example, how congressional districts are drawn does not pertain to the manner of elections. How? It determines, like, which people are going to be voting for what fucking office. How is that not the manner of elections? And he also, the cocky bastard doesn't even fucking, like, really back that up either. That's just his own, like, weird armchair legal opinion. Much like my own, but, you know, I'm doing this on my own Twitch channel for next to no money, not having it blasted in the fucking Washington Post and posted being some rich asshole, like George Will is. So George Will goes on to fucking say here, The For the People Act reflects the perennial progressive desire to reduce the states to appendages of the federal government. FTP sweeps beyond elections by expanding regulation of electioneering communication to include any communication that mentions a federal official, if only to urge support for a policy, not influence an election. Unsatisfied with their advantages in mainstream media, you sure about that? Democrats aim to impede alternative forms of advocacy, especially by requiring disclosure of even small dollar donors to organizations involved in only issue advocacy, not elections. This is sinister, given the ferocious vindictiveness of today's virtual mobs that hound people associated with controversial causes. Ah, here we go. The typical cancel culture war fucking bullshit that you can expect to hear from these types of people. So, of course, George Will is going on to say, soon the Supreme Court might issue a ruling strengthening its defense of the First Amendment right to speak anonymously. And, yeah, this will actually end up, helping Democrats like the mainstream conservative Democrats like Joe Biden, who have raised enormous amounts of anonymous donations, what Democrats love calling dark money, that were indeed 6 times the amount raised by allies of Donald Trump. Of course, George Will really only seems to give a fuck when the Democrats do it. Or, he's annoyed. He seems to be quite annoyed that the Democrats call that out as a bad thing. I mean, yeah, it's hypocritical that they call it out as a bad thing when they have like 6 times the amount of dark money as the Trump campaign does. But it doesn't necessarily mean new regulations on it are bad or even unconstitutional. Like, is George Will a fucking constitutional scholar? What the hell did that guy do for a goddamn living before he... George Will. Yeah, he writes for the fucking Washington Post a lot. That's right, yeah. Yeah, George Will is a journalist by trade, basically. And, George Will also, George Will thinks that higher rates of incarceration make the populace safer. There's all the evidence out there that shows that is a load of bullshit. So, yeah, anyways, let's get back to bottom line. George Will isn't exactly like a constitutional scholar, nor, George Will so far is also acting like treating this idea of what he thinks the Constitution is as like a Bible. That's what conservatives always did. Even now that like people like George Will act disgusted by the Donald Trump personality cult. They still do this, like, creating a cult of fucking legal documents and shit. So George Will went on to say with his piece, the parties should insist that presidential candidates make 10 years of their tax returns public. But by making this a legal requirement, the For the People Act would add a new qualification for the presidential office. In 1995, the Supreme Court, striking down a law imposing term limits on Arkansas's national legislatures, held that the Constitution sets the maximum, not minimum, of qualifications. Neither Congress nor state legislatures can augment them. That might hold up, but also, that ruling seems a little shaky. This is literally just citing the ruling itself. It doesn't cite what the actual fucking ruling is cited as the... Where does the Constitution indeed set that this is the maximum and not the minimum number of qualifications for this office? So yeah, that's a bit of a problem with that part of George Will's take here. Let's move on. FTP would compel states to count mail ballots. FTP would compel states to count mail ballots received 10 days after the election on the infantilizing assumption that voters cannot be expected to meet an election day deadline. This is built upon this ridiculous idea that elections, absolutely everything needs to be conducted on a single fucking day in order for an election to be fucking valid. This completely ignores the fact that countries like India carries out their elections over an extended period of time. Because the population of India is so gigantic, they have so many registered voters there that are voting. It's almost like infantilizing this idea of like, oh, all right, we have to have this election day, and then, oh god, ballots coming in after the election can't. Like, if the person mails their ballot by fucking election day, then isn't that, meeting the deadline, basically? Because if my fucking tax returns are postmarked by the 15th, this could also be cleared up by George Will clarifying what he means by received. But anyways, also FTBs would give voters 10 additional days to correct mistakes on mailed ballots, further prolonging possible uncertainty about elections outcomes. Oh, really? Nationally, by allowing voters to correct mistakes, that prolongs possible uncertainty. Nationally, 73% of 2020 voters cast their ballots before Election Day. Okay. Almost 44% of Florida ballots were cast by mail, yet the state tabulation was completed on Election night, which should be a national norm. Having such a rush to tabulate all the votes so fast is only going to create more room for error. Feel like that's not the most difficult concept to wrap your head around. God, these arguments that he puts forth, really, these don't really make much sense practically. It's based entirely upon these, like, ridiculous deontological ethics. These, which, like, supposedly right libertarian types like George fucking Will often cling to, like, with an absurd amount of fucking strength. They follow these deontological ethics. They view things as right or wrong based on, like, rules, then don't think of the reason for why the rules exist, or maybe the rules suck and should be changed. Yeah, so then he's going to go on and mauled about, although 43 states in the District of Columbia allow early voting between 4 and 45 days, Democrats propose to give federal government employees, which is a significant component of their party's base, paid election days off at an estimated cost of $800 million every 2 years. Although New Hampshire has no mail-in voting and requires voter IDs and in-person registration, it has been among the top 5 states of voter turnout in the past 5 previous presidential elections. Actually, a modicum of inconvenience is a civic benefit if, by drawing voters together in public places on a solemn day central to the national liturgy, election arrangements emphasize that more than just private considerations are at stake. There should be no national liturgy. Liturgy is fucking religious shit. Yeah, I know, it's a figure of speech, but really, like, shit like fucking election day, it should not be viewed as that kind of fucking ritual. That's clearly what George Will is doing here. That is very clearly the type of thinking that George Will is presenting here. Of course, George Will wants to say, hey, it's your right to vote. But then you gotta be inconvenienced by actually going out to do it. You gotta take time out of your day where even if you're working, like, basically every working hour of your fucking life in order to barely put food on the table. It's the typical conservative, fuck poor people thing, fuck the working class. You know, like, don't actually restrict democracy like de jure, but de facto restrict democracy. So George Will goes on to say in this fucking stupid piece of windbag shit, for generations, there has been judicial enforcement of constitutional and statutory protections of voting rights. And in 2020, the states rose to the challenge of conducting elections compatible with pandemic-related public health protocols. As the Democrats rightly insist, the voting with shattered turnout records was without significant malfeasance. So why 800-plus pages of revisions to electoral procedures and political practices? See above. The first sentence of the second paragraph. Now, what is that again? Oh, he's saying this about the Democrats with this federal legislation. But, but George, what about all these Republican pieces of legislation that do things like make it a fucking crime to give people water while they're waiting in line to vote? I'm skimming this very end of the fucking thing here. He's not griping about that. George Will's not griping about these Republican measures to make voting way more of a pain in the ass than it needs to be. A lot of people, which are based upon this big lie that Donald Trump had the election stolen from him. Supposedly George Will hates Donald Trump, but no. This is, I guess it's totally, what's the deal, George? Is it totally fine? Is it totally fine for these people who, as you previously mentioned, obviously have conflicts of interest because they're fucking with the voting procedures in their own states? Is it fine because of your deontological, ethical bullshit that this magical piece of paper says it's only okay for these state governments to fuck with the voting rights of the people who live in their states? So that's why you're not complaining about what the state governments are doing, which then inspired this federal action? Yeah, I think that's really how it goes. FTP reflects an appetite for constitutional vandalism that was displayed 7 years ago when 54 members of the Democratic Caucus voted to amend the First Amendment to empower Congress to regulate the quantity, content, and timing of campaign speech. Oh, God. Yep, here's more of that, like, oh, but Citizens United versus FEC is, oh, man. Yeah, this is just more this is literally just griping about how, oh, corporations are entitled to free speech, too. We shouldn't have any legal instruments considering the grossly disproportionate, influence that regular Joe Jerkoff and corporate figures with massive fucking connections are going to have with the political fucking process. But now I'm gonna accuse the Democrats of playing dirty because of this deontological ethical bullshit. Believing that things are right or wrong based on this arbitrary set of rules, which I will never bother to explain why the rules are the way they are. They're just the way they are. And if you fucking say they're wrong, they're a traitor or something. I don't know. This is why I can't fucking stand George Will or any of these other right libertarian types. And they're all such fucking liars about the right libertarian or like conservative libertarian fucking... These people using the term libertarian is such a gross misusage of the term libertarian that goes back to fucking... What the hell's that guy's name? Murray Rothbard, I think. But, yeah, Murray Rothbard. Yeah, that's the typical George Will. Hey, at least we just read that in the Washington Post because listening to that man talk is so boring. I would rather fucking it's so painfully boring listening to George Will actually speak. I would rather listen to a dude fucking chewing on tinfoil while scratching on a chalkboard with his fingernails. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed what you just saw, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and hit the bell as well. I get notifications whenever I upload things. If you like live broadcasts, come on over to my Twitch channel, and if you really like what you see, then go on over to my Patreon and become a patron. Both of those links are in the description below, and I wish you a wonderful, wonderful day.
Fuck. I can't speak right now. God damn it. Fuck.